All right, guys, welcome to the Special Ones Hangout. I'm here with Adam Digby and Greg Cimilluca. We're going to be previewing this Serie A season. We have, unfortunately, we couldn't get Sam Lewis to join us today. I think he got caught up in his dreams, maybe. But we've got Greg, who's a diehard Roma supporter. Adam, of course, represents Juve, and myself representing Juventus. Hopefully, we can get some discussion without being too biased here. How you guys doing today?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm
Doing well. Good.
Happy birthday,
Just to
Aaron.
kick, thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Just to kick it off, well, I'll ask Greg to start off. Roma is looking a lot better these days than we would have expected in the last 2 or 3 years. I had you on maybe around a year ago, a few months ago, to talk Serie A, and we did talk about the dramatic upturn in Roma's fortunes. How are you feeling about this upcoming season?
I'm sure my fellow Roma fans would probably characterize me as the Debbie Downer of the group. I just try to be a little bit more realistic, and there's more challenges. Again, like last year, the challenges are different, but there still are challenges. And the whole Benatia situation certainly is unsettling. The defense has shown in the preseason, despite it only being preseason, that that is an issue if he's not playing. And I think there's optimism and there are expectations that were not on them last year, which always makes things difficult and always makes things difficult for Roma. Generally, they've done better when very little was expected of them. And I also think the lessening and weakening of Juventus that has been perceived by many is also a bit unfounded. So I am confident that they'll have a good year. I think they'll do well. But I'm not looking at this was our team last year. They've added these new players, so therefore we should be better. I'm not following that rule. I'm waiting for them to do it on the pitch.
Okay. It looks like Sam has made it. Welcome, Sam. Sam Lewis is a Milan supporter. Welcome, man. How you doing?
I'm very well, guys. How about you?
Doing well. Glad to have you on.
Showing up like Galliani.
What's that?
Instead of showing up late like Galliani.
Oh.
Sam, we're just talking about
Like,
Greg was just giving his opinion on Roma's fortunes for this season. Just to be blunt, it's not looking quite as bright for Milan this season. What are your thoughts on your team so far?
there's a few profanities I'm probably not allowed to say quite as loud as I'd like to. But it's got pretty much progressively worse. Let's not talk about Torres because apparently that's not going to happen anymore. So I breathed a huge sigh of relief this morning reading some news that apparently we pulled out or they pulled out or something like that. But no, with regards to Milan, things aren't looking as positive at all. If you look at what the side needed at the start of the transfer window, they've had 3.5 months to sort it out. You said they needed a midfield or maybe two. They needed another centre back next to Adil Rami. That really hasn't happened. They needed a left-footed right winger, which apparently might be Biani now, who isn't even left-footed. So that's a bit of a positive. And they needed now a striker to replace Balotelli, who they decided to sell with a week left of the transfer window, and then just have no idea what to do with it. There was a reported plan to sell him by March, with Berlusconi apparently giving quotes that they wanted to sell him to Arsenal for sort of 30 million. That fell through after the World Cup. Then they sold him with 6 to 7 days left, and then just thought, oh no, what are we going to do now? And sort of started asking around. It's so disappointing, and there was such a massive overhaul needed for this team to really perform and challenge for the Champions League place, and that just hasn't happened. I feel for Filippo Inzaghi, I really do.
There seems to be no coherent plan at all. Just kind of,
No.
we'll figure it out as it goes along. What are the thoughts? Is Barbara Berlusconi doing anything? What is her role in the club now?
She's supposed to. I think the idea was that Galliani would get reined in by the presence of Barbara Berlusconi, and these sort of deals weren't meant to happen. I mean, there were reports hanging around when she first got the co-CEO position when Galliani decided to come back, because if you remember, there was that resignation, and then he withdrew it, and so on. That the idea was that they were supposed to work together, and Galliani was supposed to get specific instructions from Barbara with regards to what sort of players to approach, what sort of negotiation tactics to do. There was a specific that she laid out that transfers shouldn't have to wait until the last 2 weeks of August to get sorted out, and it appears that he hasn't really heeded that instruction quite as well as you'd like, to be honest. So I'm not really sure what her specific role is. I know what she was supposed to do, but clearly that's not quite happening. I think Barbara has got her head in the future. She wants to sort out the stadium deal. She's been very active in that. That has sort of died out a little bit. I'm not sure what's supposed to be happening. We're supposed to be taking that Expo site from 2015, but that hasn't really turned up with as much news as you'd like. Whereas Galliani was legitimately supposed to have at least some signings sorted out by the 28th of August, and that really hasn't happened to the extent that you would like either. So there's clearly a fractured communication between the two there that really isn't applicable. I mean, how often do you think two CEOs work at the head of a company? I mean, it's just an insane idea on the face of it. You don't go and see the popes plural, do you? You see the one. You know, it's insane to think about that it would make sense, but Galliani's too expensive to get rid of. The whole golden handshake thing is something that Milan either can't afford or don't want to afford. So as a result, we're stuck with this system between one woman who's inherited the job and Galliani, who's been there for years and clearly doesn't go of it. And that communication fracture is really letting the side down with regards to the transfer activity. So what her actual job is, I'm sure she's got an actual job, but I'm not sure she's doing it very well.
All right. Fair enough. Adam, as our resident Juve guy, I'm gonna wear the neutral hat for today. What's your outlook for the Juventus season? Yeah, good luck. Right?
Yeah, very neutral.
Adam, how do you think the Juve season is shaping up so far?
Obviously, losing Antonio Conte is a huge blow, but I think it's been overplayed. The players are still there; they still know the same system. Allegri's promised to carry on using that same system. Allegri's a smart coach, man. He got stiffed by the two CEO system that Sam was just talking about, and he ended up with a complete mishmash of a squad, and he didn't know what to do with it. And not many coaches would. That's a very specific role that guys like Claudio Ranieri have proven that they can do, but it's not for everybody. And I don't think Pippo Inzaghi will have fun with that either. And obviously we know Seedorf either. But when he comes into Juve, he's inheriting a smart squad, an intelligent squad, a squad that's won the league title 3 times in a row. And there's nothing to say that they can't do it again. You think, well, losing Conte will close the gap to Roma, and then Roma go sell their best player for a small fee, much like Milan selling Balotelli. Really, I can't believe they've let Benati go for less than 30 million. It's insane to me. But Sabatini's proved us all wrong once or twice before, so maybe he can do it again. But to me, that's a very, very different thing than selling a guy like Lamela or Osvaldo. It's you're ripping the heart out of the defence there, and to me that just puts the gap back exactly where it was. And 17 points last season. I think you have to allow for the fact that Roma stopped contesting the league once you had already won it, which is fair enough. So maybe it's 8-9 points then, and you think, well, Conte and Benati are sort of even that up a little bit. Then you have that Roma have got to go in the Champions League as well, which they haven't done for quite a while. Juve haven't got significantly better. I think we'd be deluding ourselves to say that they had. Guys like Pereira and Morata provide some attacking options that will let Allegri play some different formations, and that should help in Europe. But domestically, the 3-5-2 is still going to be king. The players are all still there to fill it up. Yes, sorry English people, that includes Arturo Vidal, who is not in Manchester. He is happy in Turin and training with Juve. Hard lad. There's no reason why Juve shouldn't win the league again. It won't be a walk in the park, and I don't think they'll be tearing up any record books this season, but there's absolutely no reason why they should go ahead and win a 4th straight league title.
So, in terms of the outlook for the rest of the league, we saw Napoli crash out of Champions League to Bilbao, Athletic Bilbao yesterday. How do you guys feel that the Serie A is stacked? From my point of view, it's very interesting because we see some young, exciting talent being brought in. Some of the teams are developing some brilliant young players, but then we're not seeing the results on the global stage. Sam, how do you feel that the Serie A ranks up against the rest of the world? Right now, I believe the coefficient is 5th behind Portugal still. Is that an accurate representation of what Serie A is, and do you think it can improve in the future?
I think it can improve. I think 5th is a little bit unfair. I think it's a better league overall than Portugal, but I think we're seeing an interesting twist of identity between what Ligue 1 in France used to be and Serie A, whereas the best Serie A players appear to be bought by the two big French clubs. When in times gone by it was Juventus, Milan, and Inter plucking the best French young players to play in their own squads. It's an interesting twist there. I think overall the league has a lot to offer. I'm sure we can all agree that as fans of the league. But in terms of how it's stacking up against the rest of it, obviously money talks now, and Serie A is so restricted by bureaucracy and red tape and economical problems and stadium issues that really restrict the finances of all the clubs involved, and that really restricts it. It's if you look at the upper echelon of Italian teams, the Juventuses, the Inters, the Milans in terms of stature and finances, that there suddenly is a giant gap between themselves and sort of PSG, Manchester City. There's a lot of talent then, but as you say, it's young talent, and there's a very much of a danger where we turn into a sort of like a farm team for some of the bigger European clubs around the world, which is a bit of an issue. I mean, if this was 1995, would Juventus have as much speculation around the likes of Pogba, Vidal, etc.? Would there be that much of a worry from Juventus fans that there would be a sale there? As obviously you could point to the Zidane sale, but that was a sort of anomaly in itself for the size of the fee at the time, and it's mainly a reflection of the people do see Serie A as a place where if you become a world-class player, then you won't be a world-class player there for very long, and that's a sad state of affairs. And I think it looks good in the future. I think if a lot more clubs follow the Juventus model in terms of building our stadium, filling it, making the money from that. Roma are doing the same. I think what James Pallotta's doing, managing that hedge fund, with what Sabatini's doing in terms of managing the squad, is a fantastic thing. A lot of clubs should follow that philosophy. I think Roma are going to be set up fantastically when they have their new stadium that they are going to get all the money from. And a lot of clubs just need to follow that philosophy. But Italy as a country, which we must not forget, it's not just a football problem, it's Italy as a country, is really hampering what the football teams can do with their own finances and holding on to their own players. And that's something that really needs to be improved on an economical and governmental level, not just in football. So in future, it really does depend on just as much who's in charge of the country as it is who's in charge of the football teams. And I'm not too sure. I'm not as big on the Italian political system as a couple of my friends, but based on a historical circumstance, that's not likely to improve very quickly. So we'll see. I think Serie A has a lot to offer still, but in terms of the future, it's as cloudy as it's ever been, unfortunately.
Yeah, Greg?
I don't want to completely echo Sam's words, but he put things in a very succinct way, and he's right on, because Italy does have a certain amount of challenges that other leagues and other countries don't, and until that gets cleared up, it's going to be very, very difficult. And the examples of Ligue 1 with the two teams there that came into money, and how quickly that paradigm shifted. It just really comes, how quickly does somebody want to buy a team, and then all of a sudden they can do whatever they want. They can come in and they can find good talent. The Verratti story is, how many times do we have to tell that one, where there were options to stay in Italy, and he's just gone, and probably at this point, I would imagine, doesn't have a great desire to return, because he could then use that as a stepping stone to maybe bounce to Spain or England or Germany, depending upon who's dominating the world scene at any given time. So it's going to be very difficult to get out of the hole that we've either put ourselves in or find ourselves in. But again, I think to the youth problem, there are some teams that are doing well with bringing in young players and giving them some room to play. Roma's played a little bit with that model, successfully and unsuccessfully, with giving part of their time to young guys and part of their time to the veterans. I think I may have pointed out last year, one of the reasons I felt for the turnaround was the Mercato by Sabatini was a perfect mix of the young player and veteran guys. They needed some veteran guys. You can't just have, march out there with Totti, De Rossi, Perrotta, and then 8-year-olds. 8-year-olds would be great too, but 18-year-olds and expect to, to compete for Champions League or for Europe. So the Mercato they had last summer, I felt, should have been their first Mercato under the American ownership. But either way, they're giving some room to young players. They're bringing young players in and parking them on other Italian teams, which is great. So I think the opportunity is there, but there's still a tremendous amount of infrastructure changes that really need to happen, as Sam pointed out.
Yeah. Adam, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think you both make some really good points there. I can't disagree. To be honest, I think you've got to go back and, sorry to be the one to bring it up, but you've got to go back to Calciopoli, really. If you go back and look before that, like 2005, 2006, Juve were making as much money as Bayern Munich and Manchester United were commercially. And obviously since then you look at those two clubs have taken a huge leap and Juve are just starting to find their feet. Calciopoli really impacted Italian football more than, and let's not get into a debate about how many league titles Juve have won. We all know it's 32. But it's sorry, I can't help it. You look at Milan were punished, almost missed out on being in Europe altogether, but got back in the Champions League, but sacrificed themselves to make sure that they went and won that competition that season. Lazio were punished, Roma weren't, and Inter weren't, but Inter have been mismanaged since forever, so the fact that they are in a complete mess and in a worse state than some of the top four is really no surprise, despite the fact that they were given a 5-year run at the league to do whatever they wanted. Roma had the last few days of Franco Sensi and Rosella Sensi paying gardeners far too much instead of worrying about what they were doing off the field, and now, as you said, Sam, James Pallotta's come in and he's really rectified the problems there. So you look at Roma and that's a real positive. Juve a positive. Udinese are building their own stadium effectively at the moment with a 99-year lease on the Stadio Fiule. Fiorentina are coming along nicely with a good plan and some wise business heads there. Napoli, for all they crashed out of the Champions League, De Laurentiis is doing a really, really top job there. A few other clubs are quite well run, but they're struggling a little bit. Sassuolo actually own their own stadium and are doing really, really well. And they're really a model to follow at the moment. They've got an exciting new coach. They're bringing through a lot of exciting new talent with the help of some of the big clubs. They've got intelligent football men running the club. The president, Squinzi, is very intelligent. Giovanni Rossi, who used to be the head of the Juve youth sector, is there, and he's bringing in some exciting players. They've got some strong links with Milan, bringing in players from there, and they tried to recruit people in Inzaghi before he got the Milan job. There's a lot of positives there. There's obviously, you've still got the Zamparinis and Lotitos of this world, but not every league is going to have 20 perfect teams. It's about the collective, and Serie A is heading in the right direction. It just remains to be seen how much they can actually do to bridge the gap between themselves and like the Bundesliga, La Liga, and the Premier League.
All right. So I think we would all agree that Juventus and Roma are kind of leading the pack in Serie A this year, with probably Napoli kind of trailing in behind. Who would you guys say has the biggest opportunity to push for maybe a European spot or even a third spot behind Juventus and Roma this year? Sam?
I really, really like Fiorentina. I think holding on to Quadrado if Gomez and Giuseppe Rossi stay fit, there isn't a better 1-2 strike partnership in the league, really. If you think about front twos, I think obviously Tevez and Llorente can contest that, but I really love the little and large combination myself. I love Vincenzo Montella as a coach. I think what they're doing over there, as Adam pointed out, is some smart business moves. And I think if there is any club that could push into that top three. I think with no European Champions League football, as well, Napoli don't have to deal with that either now, unfortunately. But I think they'll have Quadrado on the right. They have a great midfield. They have a decent defence, and that strike partnership, if it stays healthy, could be one of the best in the league. So if I had to pick any club, I'd put my hat on a Puck off, to be honest.
Okay, Sam, who would you pick as your biggest surprise of this upcoming season?
Ooh, biggest surprise. That's a great question. Genoa.
Okay.
I actually had them pegged as not doing so well, but I like the business that they've done. I think considering Genoa's recent record of being such a fractured, change-orientated club, I think keeping Gasperini for a second season, which is the first time they've ever kept a coach for a second season since Gasperini in 2007. I think that's an interesting move, and I think they've brought in a couple of good players that I quite like. I think Alessandro Matri, given starts, given confidence, could be a good striker in Serie A. Not great, but decent enough. I think Mauricio Pinea's got talent. I think Diego Perotti on the left is another good sign. I think if you look around Genoa, you see a lot of decent Serie A players. So I think surprised in the sense that you would probably peg them as sort of going into season 14th, 15th, 16th, but I think that could genuinely push to be a sort of 11th, 12th, 10th maybe in the vein of Verona. So I think that could be a little bit of a surprise.
All right, Greg, who are you tipping as to push the Juves and the Romas of the world in Serie A, and who's your standout or breakout performer this year?
I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit and answer slightly off of your actual question, because I just think there are two questions, and based on what the answers are to these two question teams, they could be the answer for either one of your questions. So that's why I'm kind of reworking it a little bit. I guess we'll call it hosting a podcast. You kind of think you can make your own rules, so we'll just chalk it up to that. But I would say two teams that I'm very curious about this year is going to be Torino and Parma, which were last year's kind of breakouts, if you will. And there's been some, notable changes in certainly on Torino's side, and I'm just curious if either team can maintain some of that positivity that they had at the end of last year, where they wound up, and it's going to be obviously tougher, Torino losing Immobile, but those are two teams that I'm going to be very, very watchful of. I think the first, say, quarter of the season to see how they're doing, how they're playing. Certainly noting on results, but I really want to watch and pay attention to how they're playing, and if they're being as successful with the things that they were successful with last year. I thought that they would be as average as probably anybody would think that those teams would have been last year. So I was pleasantly surprised with how well they came along. So I don't necessarily think either one of those two is going to be pushing the upper three, but I'm very curious to see if they can be pushing that bottom three or bottom two for Europe.
Same question to you, Adam. See if we lost Adam here.
No, I'm here.
Got it. All right.
Looking for a team to join to break into the top three. I think Inter have had a good summer. It looks like they're going to ship Freddie Guarini out, which should improve them a little bit off the field in the dressing room. I think he's been a bit of a problem for them since his January move to Juve fell through. Looks like he might be joining Zenit now. I think Nemanja Vidic coming in gives them the kind of leader that they've lacked in the past, and they had a lot of dressing room issues there last season, and I think they're getting rid of the old guard, the likes of Cambiasso and Rito and Zanetti retiring. I think that should help that and make it much more Mazzari's team than the team Mazzari inherited, and they look like they can do really well. As for a surprise, I think Parma, they were unfortunate not to be allowed into Europe on a technicality last season, but that could benefit them. They finished 6th last year, above Torino, who've actually taken that European place. which I'm surprised didn't find its way to Milan somehow with Berlusconi around. But you look at, they've got a good goalkeeper in Mirante, they've got some smart defenders in Paletta and Cassani, they've got Antonio Cassano, they just added Francesco Lodi up front. I think that they could definitely push on for a European place, remembering to fill out the paperwork this time and take a few people by surprise.
All right. Just to kind of round it off, who are you guys stand out or break out individual performers? And who do you tip to win Serie A this season? Sam, we'll start with you. Put you on the hot spot.
Right away. Okay, I think I was privately saying to friends a couple of weeks ago before the Bonatia sale that I thought Roma would just pip Juventus to the Serie A title. But now, without Bonatia, I don't think that's quite a good prediction as I originally thought it was. I think even with Allegri in charge, and as a beleaguered Milan fan, I know he's a smart coach, but there was a few decisions on his end that I still really can't get my head around. But I think it will be Juventus, and Adam is right in saying that they led the league by so much with Conte. That Conte is a great coach, but 17 points on his own is probably not all down to him. And they kept Vidal, and Roma lost Bonatia, and I think that might be the pendulum swing that keeps it in Turin. So I think it'll be Juventus to win the title. In terms of individual performers, Keisuke Honda. I wrote an article about this recently. I think with the departure of Balotelli, I think that frees up Keisuke Honda's space. He played on the right wing a lot last year in a 4-2-3-1. It didn't really suit him at all. There was a lot of occasions where it looked like Balotelli and him were sort of bumping into each other, with Balotelli dropping deep and Honda looking to go into the same sort of space to create. Whoever Milan bring in at all, if it is Fernando Torres, then yeah, I just have to sort of take a pause just to say that out loud. It doesn't really feel quite as good. But he will benefit, whoever it is, he will benefit from having a more natural striker, shall we say, a proper finisher in front of him. He's a very talented player. He'll have 6 months under his belt in Serie A. He'll be able to start afresh. He will be relied upon a little bit more. And obviously Milan haven't brought in Churchy either, so against Lazio I'm expecting Honda to start on the right with probably Menez on the bench. And I think that will really benefit him. So I think Keisuke Honda could be the breakout star that we expected him to be, or at least I did, in January. So yeah, Keisuke Honda.
As long as he doesn't get a hold of the corners, I would agree with you. I think
he forgot what sport he was playing for a second, didn't he?
I think he was trying to get it out of the stadium. I think someone bet him that he could hit a corner kick out of the stadium, and he got pretty.
Clearly, Wayne Rooney was watching.
It was amazing.
Someone probably bet him that he could make a worse cross than Massimo Oddo, and he thought, nah, I can't.
Milan, the most titled poor crosses in the world, right? That's gonna be the next thing on the jerseys.
Galliani will have that on the website tomorrow.
All you need to do is sign Christian Molinaro, and you might just have that title.
Don't say that. Don't say that out loud. Someone might hear that. I wouldn't rule anything out at this point. I really wouldn't.
Greg, how about you? The same question I just posed to Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not going to buck the trend. I don't see anybody have made any kind of gains to remove Juve from the title. As I mentioned at the onset, less about what I feel Roma's chances are. I just don't think that Juve's been weakened. Yes, Conte leaving was, unfortunate, but as you all have spent so much time talking on today, and rightfully so, there's still so much value there, and Allegri is not going to do that much damage to it that the team is all of a sudden going to fall apart. So I think it was a difficult hill to climb last year to catch Juve. I pointed out after the 10-game win streak to start the season that all it bought us at that point in time was only 3 points. And if we can win 10 games in a row and all we have is a 1-win margin over second place, that's not going to be nearly enough. We can, Roma could not keep up that pace, and that was obviously the case. So I don't anticipate us starting 10 in a row again. So I just don't really see any team catching them, unless they have significant injury problems or some sort of major unforeseeable issue. As far as player, Adam kind of stole mine. It's not new, but he's certainly new to Serie A with Vidic. I saw him play against Roma in Philadelphia, and the confidence and leadership that he brought to that back line, and then you throw in all the stuff that Adam pointed out specifically about in the locker room and everything else, but you could see there was a distinct difference with how they were playing with him back there. I mean, he did not. He's basically like the center back version of Morgan DeSantis. He doesn't shut up, and he's very, very loud. And the players responded to it. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's yelling at them, but he's yelling for them. Like move up, go back. To the left, to the right. Always cheering them on. Always teaching. Kind of in the middle of the game, he's teaching these guys. He's the experience I think that they probably needed. That's valuable experience, European experience, but also maybe not legacy Serie A problems. There will be an adjustment to playing in Italy for the first time, but I do think that he is going to be significant for Inter in helping them be a little bit better than they were last year.
Yeah, I agree. Is still struggling to replace him. I think he was probably their single biggest loss. They still haven't found anyone who could step into his boots. I had the privilege to watch him play, and I say privilege when him, not Inter. I watched him play in DC. Unfortunately, I did have to watch Inter play as well. But against Manchester United, every time he touched the ball, that whole stadium erupted because United fans still love him. They're upset that he left, and rightly so. He's a great player. He's still got it in him. He could still play at the Champions League level. He just chose to leave. And it shows that United fans are still upset that he was let go. For Serie A winner, and who's your breakout performer this season?
I think, as I already said, I think you can't look beyond Juve for who's going to win the league. As for a breakout player,
I just wanted to hear you say Juve again.
Yeah. Juve are going to win the league, I reckon. That'll be.
Hey,
I couldn't keep my neutral hat on for too long.
Yeah, and that'll be 33 for those of you keeping score at home. As for a breakout performer, I think I'm going to go along with Sam's logic a little bit here. I think Balotelli going is going to help Milan in certain aspects. I think Stefan El Shaarawy is a player who can really take advantage of it. In the winter before Balotelli arrived, El Shaarawy made it to Christmas with 16 goals and managed 2 the rest of the campaign. I think with Immobile gone and Di Natale another year older and Luca Toni another year older, I can honestly see Stefan El Shaarawy being top scorer this season.
Wow, bold prediction.
Well, you've got to say something interesting, haven't you? I'm just trying to give you some hope, Sam, It's like,
I appreciate that, thanks. You're already much more than the Milan board are doing for me. So.
I think they've got some good attacking players. They've got Pippo Inzaghi, and El Shaarawy is a quality player. And without Balotelli getting in his way, I just think he can have a really good campaign.
All right. Well, I think that's just about going to wrap it up for us today. Really appreciate you guys joining us. Hopefully we can get a couple more of these in during the season. Again, thank you to Greg, founder and host of the La Magicast. I hope I said that right. A Roma podcast. Adam Digby, contributor to 442 In Bed with Maradona, 8x8 Mag, and Sam Lewis, freelance writer. He works for Football Italia, Vavel USA, and Amphi. Again, thank you guys for joining us. This has been a special ones hangout, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers, Aaron. Ciao, ciao.
All right, we are no